IBM TV, International Broadcast Media. This is the Lawyer's Den. This unique broadcast brings you in-depth discussions with American legal scholars to discuss the current issues facing our nation. I am Bill Tresvant, and along with my pleasant and understated Southern colleague, Nick Palavita, we are your co-hosts. Nick, will you please do the honors of introducing our guests?
Yes, I will, and welcome from the den. We have from Chicago, Illinois, an appellate attorney with more than 30 years experience, a graduate of the Illinois Institute of Technology and the Columbia University School of Law, who passed all four parts of the CPA exam. Let's welcome Frederick Ryan to this program. Welcome to the program. And we're going to have almost a full den tonight. We do recognize that Becca Cantley is going to be out till next week with an injury, but who is not out this week is, of course, our favorite attorney from the Great Salt Lake area, a J.D. Ellum attorney with experience before the Supreme Court of the United States, writing briefs and also following it in detail. Let's welcome to the den our friend and colleague, Jeff Teichert.
Hello, Jeff. All right.
Okay, and last but not least, with his own fan club that stretches across the United States, and of course in Georgia, where he actually teaches law. Somebody's got to teach that subject to his students, a J.D. Ellum attorney from the University of Southern California, the Ohio State University, and a graduate of New York University, a constitutional law scholar, soon to basically get voted in as president of the United States. As we know, we lack talent upstairs, but this guy doesn't lack talent. As a matter of fact, he has a lot of fans. Adam Lamparello. Adam,
great to be here.
Yes, and it just gets tiring day after day as we see your fan club keep sending me emails, and I'm trying to think what I'm going to be able to do anymore with my server. Maybe I can shut off the comments section. Get this guy, but it is what it is. I don't know where he gets this popularity from.
I appreciate the support.
You appreciate the support. Now you sound like a real politician. I appreciate
right. Seriously, like you're going to get on my show and curry favor, Adam?
Go do your own show, Adam.
Because hey, Nick, some country bumpkin from Georgia gets under the big Klieg lights, and suddenly he's got a fan.
The thing is, he reminds me of Jimmy Cotta. Hey, I'm just a cool dude from.
Just start calling me number 48.
Oh Lord, I don't know what we're going to be able to do. I mean, but the thing is, if you look at all the people that win the presidency, they excelled in media because they figured it out. So anyway, the thing is, we got to get your fan club off the air somehow. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
You know what I figured, Nick? I figured that what we could do is we could run alternate emails down to the bottom. That way you wouldn't catch all the e-flames. And that way that'll allow me to attack Adam, because I don't feel the same need that you do to have to answer any emails.
Good idea. Yeah. We'll figure a way to gang up on him as soon as we get the subject matter that's going to be in front of this august body. Now, you guys do realize we are competing at the same time with Judge Judy. You can listen to the 14th time somebody go to court because they didn't pay rent to their landlord. Woo! Okay, but we're not going to be discussing not paying rent to landlord. What are we going to be discussing? Bill, what's on the topic?
Well, it is. I mean, it's 2020 has been just the year. Just when we think we're catching our breath, even when we think that we can balance on our skateboards again, and with all the stuff with Trump, here we have Obamacare, again, a decade later, except that this time, in front of the Supreme Court, this time, there are 23 million people who have coverage that would be without coverage, depending on what the Supreme Court decides this time around. And more importantly, and this is the real coup de grace, gentlemen, that there are 54 million people with what we would now call pre-existing conditions that qualify for health care and cannot be discriminated against under the current American Health Care Act. And the problem is that we have a conservative Supreme Court that apparently is itching, I would say, to strike down the law, leaving 23 million without health insurance and 54 million available to be discriminated against with wholly oppressive premiums. Now, this is what we know because this one was going to be quite interesting. And so we here at the Lawyer's Den set one of our own to the task of making sure that they could brief us and you, our audience. And so for that, I'm turning it over to Jeff. Jeff, you paid particularly close attention to the oral arguments today, which I understand were broadcast live while the justices were in their home offices. Is that right, Jeff?
I was able to listen to it. They don't have videos of it anywhere that I'm aware of, but I was able to listen to it. Yes.
No, because they all phoned it in, so they were like on a big conference call, say, with the rest of the entire world. So how did that conference call go, Jeff? And tell us what if, because I understand that there were three basic arguments that they were making today.
Well, it was interesting, just from a stylistic point of view. Let me just throw this out. Since COVID has happened, the way the arguments run is Chief Justice Roberts starts out questioning the two attorneys, and then he goes in order of seniority and allows each of the justices to question the attorney that's before them. Typically, when they're all there in the courtroom together, it's not nearly that orderly. It's like a judicial mixmaster. Somebody starts an argument, and immediately, almost within 10 seconds, one of the justices will break in and start questioning, and then they're just taking fire from everywhere after that. But currently, it's pretty orderly. So I just throw that out.
Okay, well, kind of like the Lawyers Den. Well, we'll just have to catch up to them. So, what are the three questions that they had going on then, Jeff?
Well, a couple of things. One is I was surprised to see how much time they spent on standing. Now, for any in the audience that don't know what standing means, that is, do you have a case in controversy? Do you have an actual case with an actual injured party that is before the court, or are you asking the court to render an opinion that is an advisory opinion, or that is basically declaring the law when there's no real dispute occurring? And Adam has said that he'd like to see the court just be able to give advisory opinions and settle certain areas of the law, but that isn't the current state of the law. And they talked a lot about standing and about whether there is actually an injured party. I found that argument kind of interesting because they're taking standing, or they made the argument about standing from the fact that, well, the individual mandate has been repealed when it hasn't actually been repealed. The individual mandate is still there, but the penalty for not obeying it has been repealed. And so there was all this debate about whether this may be a law that doesn't require anybody to do anything. So does anybody come in and have standing to make a dispute under the Affordable Care Act because it doesn't require anything of them?
Okay. A second. All right, Nick?
No, I just said that was pretty interesting.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And what was the second big thing, Jeff?
Well, then, of course, on the merits, you have the question of severability.
Okay.
And ordinarily, the question of severability is if you have a statute that is unconstitutional in one respect, could you sever that particular portion of the law without making the rest of the law collapse? Now, this is this raised a pretty interesting question with the justices because the Affordable Care Act was originally upheld with the individual mandate and the penalty going along with it as part of the law. Well, in this case, the individual mandate was not held unconstitutional, but the individual mandate was the penalty to enforce it was repealed. And so the question then is since there's no penalty, does the individual mandate still in some sense qualify as a tax, which would allow Congress to pass the act as a tax if the tax is essentially 0%? And there was an unbelievable amount of discussion by the justices as to, well, is this a tax that has been temporarily repealed, or where we're temporarily not collecting it, or is this something permanent? And
Okay.
I think the general consensus is probably that if the tax doesn't raise revenue, there's no tax.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
so if that's the case,
No,
then
Jeff. We've got to get all the issues out first, okay? And then we got to give everybody else a chance to speak. And so what was item number 3, please?
well, and then I guess item number 3 is if there's no tax involved anymore, is there an alternative justification or constitutional power that Congress is exercising by passing the act? And that would include, is it permissible under the commerce power or under the necessary and proper clause in the preamble? And the question, I guess, then there wasn't actually a lot of discussion on that, but is there another constitutional power that would justify it if the taxing power is not available?
Okay. We have these 3 complicated issues, and I think I have which way we'd like to proceed. Of course, Adam, I'm going to give you the first bite at the apple. Was this one of those areas that they just did not need to stick their nose into? Adam.
This is a very silly and sad day in the history of the Supreme Court's jurisprudence, and it begins with Chief Justice Roberts' decision in National Federation of Independent Investors versus Sebelius, when Justice Roberts authored an opinion on behalf of a 5-4 court holding that the individual mandate was a tax. The court should have never, ever gotten involved in this case from the beginning. And now you see the mess that's created, similar to the mess that was created after Roe versus Wade was decided, which had no basis in the Constitution. That's number 1. Number 2,
okay,
our case for an advisory opinion could not be stronger in a situation like this. We've had to wait how long to get the Supreme Court to decide this issue when it could have been decided at the outset, bringing more efficiency and stability to the law. And number 3, as I predicted, it will be a 5-4 majority with Justice Roberts and Kavanaugh joining Kagan, Sotomayor, and Breyer to hold that the individual mandate is severable, and therefore the remaining parts of the statute remain intact.
Okay, Adam. First, apparently one of your fans have shown up, so I'm going to give you this due. Have you read it?
Oh wow! Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay.
This is getting hard on me to watch.
I know.
So
Nick,
I'm going backstage, baby.
Nick, the
Fan
Lord
club
giveth,
start showing up.
the Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. Now, Adam, why is it that you can never just argue one case at a time? You're always bringing Roe v. Wade into everything. It's like all you're doing is you start an argument, and then you throw in Roe v. Wade like you're throwing tomatoes, or you're like casting nickels about. However, your issue on standing is completely wrong. It's obviously a major issue that the American people need to look at. Now, Frederick, I am coming to you for the substance because I know you to be a man of letters. And I know you have been well thought out and well prepped, and everything that Adam says just merely just gibberish. Now, Frederick, this issue of severability. Now, because clearly we're dismissing the notion of standing. They clearly do have standing. That's why they're there. Unless all the other lower courts are just plain stupid, they would have thrown the case out. So, Frederick, assuming we have standing, what do you make of this issue of severability and the Healthcare Act?
Well, as Jeff suggested, this is a pretty bizarre sort of severability argument. Basically, the petitioners are arguing that without the individual mandate, the ACA just sort of falls to the ground, that it just can't function without the individual mandate.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that the ACA works a lot better with the individual mandate because they're getting money from more people and hopefully younger, healthier people who otherwise might not be inclined to sign up. but this notion that basically it amounts to an idea that Congress somehow sub silentio got rid of the entire ACA by getting rid of the penalty for non-compliance. And it's very strange. I mean, Congress expressly, the Republicans in Congress expressly attempted to repeal the ACA many times, dozens of times, and presumably presumably they would know if they had repealed the thing. Yes, they would have said so.
Yeah, and actually, Frederick, just on that point, I recall it occurs to me that during today's oral arguments, Chief Justice Robert asked that specific point. He said that, listen, given that the penalty portion of the ACA was zeroed out and therefore vitiated the notion that there isn't there's a penalty at all. Roberts pointed out that Congress nevertheless didn't take any other action against the act. And so presumably that would stand as the intent of Congress, because they knew that without the financial penalty that they could have taken other actions with the law, but they didn't change it. And that was a point that Roberts made on this issue of severability and whether or not the ACA could stand without this penalty. Would you agree, Frederick?
Yes. If the Supreme Court were to take this opportunity to strike down the ACA, I think it would be a really egregious instance of judicial activism, basically saying, oh, Congress is so stupid that here they didn't realize that in getting rid of the penalty, they were actually striking down the ACA. And so we're going to correct their error for them and strike down the whole damn thing.
Yeah, so that while this 6-3 majority is generally non-invasive and non-activist, they, of course, would come in and say, obviously, Congress, let's save you from your own stupidity. Now, it just seems to me Congress is stupid for any number of other reasons that we can all point fingers at, but this is not necessarily one of those reasons. But it seems to me, Jeff, I want to come to you on this one because I want to give you the meat and bones here. And that is what other constitutional basis could there be if once you remove the penalty portion under the Commerce Clause?
Okay, great question, and I'm happy to take that on. Now, in terms of severability, just one final thought on that. There was a lot of argument about this among the justices, and Justice Kagan, was particularly vocal on a couple of these points, but it seemed like the argument pivoted on the prefatory language in the act, which is the whereas kind of stuff, and they said, well, yeah, Congress only surgically removed the penalties. But all of this stuff in the act says how important the individual mandate is, and they left all that in, and so the act somehow falls even though all Congress repealed was the penalty, and they didn't clean up all this language about how important the individual mandate was. And I don't think that's going to fly with a majority of the justices, just to throw my 2 cents out. The bigger question is the one you just asked. That is, if there is no revenue coming in from the penalty, this is no longer a tax. Now, I referred to Justice Kagan. She was saying, let me get this straight. You made the act less punitive, less harsh, less severe when you repealed the penalty, and now somehow it's unconstitutional because it's less severe. And the attorney was arguing, yeah, that's exactly what we're arguing. It's no longer a tax. You have to justify it under another constitutional power. If that is true, then you got to get rid of the act, really, because and both Justice Gorsuch and Justice Barrett were strongly signaling this is the direction they're going, that NFIB, the case Adam referred to, which was the previous Obamacare case, Justice Roberts had in fact held in his majority opinion that you could not justify the ACA under the commerce power, that it flunked the commerce power analysis. And so, I think there was a big effort by counsel for that was trying to uphold the act to say, no, this is still a tax, even though it doesn't raise any revenue. And, there were some real mental gymnastics going on trying to make that one work. So I think it's going to be interesting on that point. If we get past the standing issue, which I'm not entirely convinced we will, I could see conservative justices throwing this sucker out on standing. But if they don't, then you're going to have a big debate on the Commerce Clause, and they're going to revisit NFIB, and it's going to be an interesting opinion.
Okay, well, let's see who else. Okay, Adam. Okay, alternative basis in the Constitution, and then Nick, I'm going to come to you if you want, but to make some sense of it, Nick. But Adam, I want to hear from you. Is there an alternative basis, or are you going to side with your colleague Jeff and say it's out the door?
Well, as a matter of law, I side with Jeff. This case is an absolute mess, and it's a mess that was created by the decision in NFIB, in which Roberts held that the act was justified based on the taxing power, which was clearly legal gymnastics in its most purest form. Now there's no way that you can justify it on that basis. And in NFIB, you had a majority of the court holding that the act was not justified under the Commerce Clause. So what the Supreme Court has created as a result of, I would argue, is a terrible decision in NFIB, is an absolute mess. And it's going to have to go through mental gymnastics, as Jeff said, to uphold its constitutionality. But I suspect it will for political reasons, and I suspect a 5-4 decision. And I again reiterate, it should have never heard this case.
No, Adam, that's not good enough, because I want to know what basis you're saying. You can't just say, oh yeah, they made a wrong decision, but they're going to uphold it for political reasons. Well, clearly, if they choose to do that and it's decision directed, they still have to cite another basis in the Constitution. So I'm asking you, Adam, to step out of your comfort zone and make an argument for another part of the Constitution is supporting the Health Care Act. And please do that, because all of your students think that you're highly intelligent, and your fan club would be disappointed if you can't even make the alternative argument.
Oh, I most certainly can. They're going to revisit National Federation of Independent Investors versus Sebelius, and they're going to reanalyze it under the Commerce Clause. Okay, and they're going to cure, or at least address, Roberts' poor reasoning in NFIB, which was purely a political decision, quite frankly.
No, hang on. You're saying that they are then going to once again uphold the ACA on the basis that it passes the Commerce Clause test. Is that
or they're going to say that Congress did not explicitly state that the various provisions were not severable. So they're going to say it's severable.
Right. So if they are not going to uphold it under the Commerce provision, which you clearly think that they can't, and fine, and yet they are going to uphold it as being somewhere being found in the Constitution, but it's clearly not according to you, then don't they have to find it in the penumbras, Adam?
Well, if they find it in the penumbras, then
yes, Adam, that's a yes or no. They not what you think. If they find it, because clearly it's not based in the Commerce Clause, according to you, but they're going to make the decision to uphold it anyway, because we got 54 million and then another 23 million. That's 77 million. And if there's no other clear-cut basis that even you, a constitutional law professor, can make an argument for, then they have to find it in the penumbras, don't they, Adam?
No, they do not, because they're going to base it on statutory construction, and they are going to hold that it is severable and that Congress did not express any clear intent that it be non-severable if it was invalidated. But again, this is the mess created by a court that should have never heard this case in the first place.
Frederick, you're listening to me now. Please, Frederick, help this young law professor just understand what you know to be true.
I I don't know what the court's going to do. I mean, the Commerce Clause is the obvious basis. So, but if they say if they continue to say it's not supportable under the Commerce Clause, and now the power to tax no longer applies, I don't know. I wish I could give a more brilliant answer, but I don't know.
Can't they find it in the penumbras of the Constitution where they get to say we can because we're the Supreme Court? Nick?
Oh, okay, fine. Finally, we get to jump in here. And
all right.
Let's
No,
first,
Nick, I had to pin everybody down for you. So now all you got to do is
okay.
shoot.
Let's first look at the standing issue. For people who don't know, imagine this, because remember, it's a healthcare act. Standing is like this. You get somebody from Venezuela who comes into court. Well, they can't go to court because they don't have standing. Or you have a Medicare recipient saying, look, I have a complaint against the ACA. Well, you may not have standing because it doesn't apply to Medicare recipients. So standing, though, I believe they're going to grant standing. It's always an issue before the court. It's something lawyers love to talk about, but frankly, it's a complete waste of time. So let's move on. Severability. Now, this is a very interesting issue. In contract law, when you draft a contract, except when we draft them, Bill, you always have a severability clause that if one clause is struck down, the rest will stand. Some cases you even do that in wills, trust, and estates. If this is struck one clause, the rest will stand. Now, when we look at acts of Congress, can you imagine this? Because I work in the area of tax, that one area of the law in tax was struck down. So do you strike down the entire Internal Revenue Code and say no one has to pay taxes? No. What you do is you find severability. That area is moved aside, but the rest of it will stand. I believe the court, when they come to their senses, will say that the rest of it stands. Now, this whole argument that it's not a tax, you got to be under the Tax Act because you're not paying taxes. What? There's a lot of, in the Internal Revenue Code, there's a lot of provisions that you follow that at the end of the day, you don't pay a tax. Okay, so the thing is, that whole argument is going to go bye-bye also as soon as the justices go to their clerks and tell their clerks to do research on it, and the clerks come back with the opinion and they sign off on it. So this whole thing is much ado about nothing. It's going to be severable. They're going to say it's severable. They're going to still, even though Adam doesn't like the fact he skirted around the tax when it should have been in the Commerce Clause. Technically, Adam is correct. If I said anything different, his fan club would jump on me. Okay. So the thing is, as they should, right? And so the thing is, at the end of the day, we're wasting our time with the ACA. The problem that I have with the ACA is it really doesn't do anything. It is the biggest fraud on the American public. And all you have to do is look at the numbers. The United States of America, we spend $3.5 trillion every year on our healthcare, far distancing any other country in the world, Bill. And what do we have for it? We do not have the best mortality in the world, and we have coronavirus that's killing 200 and some thousand people. So the biggest fraud on America is the ACA itself. When a person my age, before I get $1, I got to spend 20 grand on my healthcare bill. And then the thing is, maybe $1 will come back and maybe it won't. It's the biggest fraud ever perpetrated on the American public. But we could go into that in policy. It's the entire healthcare system.
No, Nick, and that is precisely because your friends who are the 1%ers wouldn't allow the Obama administration to go far enough by making sure that it was a universal healthcare coverage that we grabbed everybody. Instead, you had to piecemeal it because your 1%ers couldn't live without their,
we can argue that on Economics Monday.
Not live without their gold card, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or purple or platinum or black or whatever it is that they got. And, all the other stuff. Because it's that we didn't go far enough. Because
it's too expensive. Look at the numbers. $3.5 trillion. That's bigger than all the economies in the world except for 4 of them.
Okay, then why? We could just take it piece by piece. If the government had enough authority, they could negotiate mass prices and drive down the cost.
Sure, that's what they should do.
Right. And I'm telling you, that's why we didn't go far enough, Nick. So, I mean, I understand you're upset, but you're upset now because before you guys were upset that anything was going to be done for all the poor people. You were like, let them eat cake. That was your whole crew. And so as a result, we got as much as we could get. And now you're complaining that it doesn't cover you and you've got to spend $20,000. Well,
nothing.
The solution is to let us go all the way through. And I don't care if we use, listen, I don't care if we use the penumbras, the necessary and proper clause, the commerce clause. I don't care how we get there, as long as we get there. And don't mind me, Adam, and don't mind me, Jeff. I happen to think that you guys aren't even looking at the plain text of the word, which is what Congress did. They took out the mandate. They said, hey, buy or don't buy, we're not going to penalize you because we're going to have health care. And that is what Congress intended. And if you guys were actually reading the Constitution in the way that you say that you're structured to read the Constitution, you leave the whole thing alone. After
Okay, as soon as you get off your left-wing soapbox, you'll go see the reality of this bill. $3.5 trillion are spent in healthcare. The only statute that actually covers cost, I don't know if you've read through it, is Medicare. Medicare has a cost per each operation down to the T. They cover costs. The ACA does not cover costs. It's cost plus 25% for sales and administration. It's a horrible piece of trash. So if they throw it out, I'm okay with it. I don't think they will. Because remember, they're going to pontificate and say, well, there was standing, severability, and we're going to go to the taxing statute as we did before, and everything's okay. And that's what's going to happen. What should happen is you're the people in your mud hole in Washington, D.C. should revamp the entire healthcare system, because the healthcare system is the most expensive and not the best in the world anymore. But that's an economic thing for Economics Monday, not for.
Nope, that's fine. And I'm saying that one of the beauties of being an attorney is that I don't have to understand math, and I don't care if it pays for itself, but I do care that we have it. So, Jeff, do you have anything to say about that?
We have an expensive. We have an expensive and not workable healthcare system, and you're happy we have it. That's the problem with the left. There we go.
No, whoa! I'm not going to let you off that.
Can I ask a question?
I just put up with 4 years of Trump. That's the problem with the right, Nick.
that was a revenge of the right.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of points. Number one, I'm going to forecast where this is headed. I think you've got 4 votes that would say punt this on standing. That is Breyer, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Clarence Thomas. Now, Thomas, you might laugh that that's an outlier. He was pretty clearly signaling today that you don't even get to severability until you have standing, and he's not going to consider severability as part of the standing question. So I think Clarence Thomas is a 4th vote to punt this thing on standing. Who is the swing vote on that? I think it's Alito. I think everybody else goes to the merits on this. I don't know what Justice Alito is going to do. I don't think he made any statement on that. Once you get to the merits, then I think Gorsuch and Barrett clearly throw this out under the Commerce Clause. I think Roberts clearly throws it out under the Commerce Clause because he's committed to that position in NFIB. The swing votes on that are Alito and Kavanaugh, in my opinion. I think Thomas, at least historically, has a narrow view of the Commerce Clause. So that's I think it's going to be interesting. I think a whole bunch of different opinions are going to be written. I don't think you're going to have a majority and a dissent. I think you're going to have a majority or a plurality, several concurring opinions, and 3 or 4 dissents. I think it's going to be a massive book by the time it's done. Now, with what you're saying about, I don't care how they do it, let's just find a provision in the Constitution to justify it under. That's where Bill and I differ. I don't believe in result-oriented jurisprudence. I think you got to go where the Constitution and the law takes you, and sometimes that takes you places you don't want to go. You trust that if this gets thrown out on constitutional grounds because the commerce power isn't big enough, that Congress can go back and pass something that will work. So That's kind of where I am on it.
I totally understand. And Adam, I'm coming to you now to try to knock this down. But it seems to me that we've given due deference over the last number of weeks to the yahoos over there with the originalist thinking about, well, it's got to be past the purity test. It's got to be ideological clear. It's this, it's that. It's about time for some pushback. And that pushback is that maybe you're just wrong. And maybe 54 million people with pre-existing conditions and 23 million people who would lose their health care. And the fact that Congress did do something about it should not leave it up to 9 unelected people to come in and decide that they are going to ruin 77 million lives in America. And that rather their job is to find it under life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness if we need to find it under there. Find it in the penumbras. Find it in the back pocket. Find it in the change that fell through the couch for all I care. But find a way to make sure that the Healthcare Act works. And frankly, Nick, I apologize. I feel really bad for the 1% that have the problem that you are describing. But it seems to me the 1% can cure that with the money that they have that they've taken from the other 99. Now, Frederick, Adam, I'm going to come to you, but Frederick, I'm going to come to you because clearly I'm the outlier on this panel this evening. Adam.
Well, the first thing I'd say is I'm traumatized because you said penumbras about 5 times. So I'm going to have to get over that first. The second thing I would say is that, I'm not a healthcare expert, but it seems to me that poor people do have healthcare. Poor people are never without healthcare. Yes, they go to the emergency room, but they get healthcare. And poor people also get Medicaid in all 50 states. Now, not that that's the primary issue here, but the fact is what you just said is true, but it works in the opposite direction. If, as I suggested, the court had never gotten involved with this from the start and deferred to the coordinate branches, which you've disagreed with before, then we'd reach the precise result that you're advocating for, and which would be pursuant to the differential philosophy that I've advocated. So there's nothing inconsistent about my position. It is that the court should have never gotten involved because there's nothing in the Constitution's text that supports invalidating the statute. It never did. Roberts created a mess. And you don't go to the penumbras to do it. You go to the politicians and the legislature to do it. And that's where it should have started and ended.
Wow. Wow. I'm eating crow right now. I mean, we're reaching the same conclusion, but for very, very different reasons. Frederick and then Nick. I'm sorry, Nick or Frederick? Which way? Frederick?
Well, I just don't see, I don't see how Medicare is constitutional. Medicaid is constitutional. I don't know why the ACA should be unconstitutional. So the damn thing should be upheld.
Okay. All right. So the thing is, now I'll jump in. So it's upheld. So what? The real problem that we have is the math doesn't make any sense. And here's the math. Go eat this one. The United States total GDP, 23 trillion. China, 20 trillion. Those are the number 1 and 2. Number 3 spot, Japan, 8.5 trillion. The number 4 spot is the United States expense in healthcare, 3.5 trillion. Then comes India, 2.7 trillion. That's their total GDP. Then comes Great Britain, 2.7 trillion. That's their total GDP. The real problem, my math challenged attorneys and jurists, is that we don't recognize the fact that we are blowing 3.5 trillion greater than the entire economy of Great Britain or India on our ridiculous health system. So whether they uphold it or not, or the numbers float down or not, it still doesn't matter. We haven't addressed the root of the evil here that exists, which is overinflated healthcare costs in the United States. Once we address the root of the evil, then these cases will make more sense. Other than that, it's a complete waste of time. And the thing is, the Americans need to know that that is the scam that's going on right now in our healthcare system. $3.5 trillion a year down the drain, more than the entire economy of Brazil, or the entire economy of India, or the entire economy of Great Britain. And that's the realities.
And we put no money towards preventative care whatsoever. And that's the problem.
That's what I'm saying. I agree with you, Adam. It's a complete waste. Now they're going to uphold this stuff. That's fine. So uphold a complete waste. Great.
Well, I have the exact answer, and that is this. It is the expansive and unapologetic use of executive order by the incoming president-elect as soon as we get the current guy out of there, who, incidentally, is completely not cooperating across the board. But don't mind me. I say we use executive order, executive order, executive order until your friends on the Supreme Court that are about to throw out the Healthcare Act decide to rein in Chevron. But what do I know? You guys just have it in all the different ways. You want to get rid of healthcare. You want to have a perfect ideology and a plan. Nick doesn't care as long as he doesn't have to pay. And then you want to make sure that nobody can write any rules. And then people will be without health insurance. But don't mind me. Frederick, do you have any thoughts? Because clearly I'm an outlier. I'm not letting go. I'm a dog with a bone tonight.
I got nothing beyond what I've already said.
Okay,
Uphold the damn law.
okay, Jeff. Okay, all right. So, yeah.
Can I address what Nick said? Because I partially agree with what he was saying. If you want a really frustrating experience, call your doctor's office sometime and ask them, if I come in and I want this or that medical treatment done, how much is it going to cost me? And you know what? They can't tell you. They won't tell you. Until they've discussed it with the insurance company, they have no idea what it's going to cost. Now, that does not encourage cost control. People going into a doctor's office are not consumers anymore because we've got a third-party payer system. People say we don't want socialized medicine in America. We've got it. We've had it for years and it doesn't work. And so that's a big part of the problem. We've got to make people consumers or they're going to overutilize and they're not going to put any pressure on the system to keep costs down. And I'm not suggesting that, health insurance doesn't have its place. Of course it does. And we need health insurance for the events that we can't pay for. But we don't insure our cars for oil changes, for maintenance and stuff like that. We are insuring our human bodies for oil changes, for the equivalent of that. And so people go to the doctor and get a prescription when for the sniffles, when really go take NyQuil but that's going to cost $10 more. So I think it's a complex problem. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but we have had socialized medicine in America for years. It doesn't work. That's one reason it's so expensive. When we talk about how any free good is exploited, that's an economics 101. And when you've got a sunk cost, you have an essentially free good, and you're going to take as much advantage of your healthcare plan as you can because you paid your premium. That's a sunk cost. You're going to go out and get everything you can out of it. And that's what we've got to really change. We've got to make people consumers of healthcare again, instead of, beneficiaries of a large system.
Well, okay, Jeff, that's a bit unfair, isn't it? In terms of, because let me just try it this way. Whenever I talk to the capitalists, which is just about everybody on this panel, highlighted and led by Nick and his crew over there at their country club, but they say that, listen, I didn't pay any taxes because that's the system. And so what if I made the best use of it? And also Trump. They say, listen, I made $1 on that and I shorted the stock because that's what I did. Or they say, yes, we took over the company and then we looted the pension plan because I could do it. And I was going to exercise my rights to the maximum ability. And all of that is okay, except when it comes to someone turning around and saying, I paid my premium and now I want to use my health care because I paid my premium. But that somehow is wrong. So I have to be responsible and husband my notions of using my health care on my health, but everybody else gets to run free and cheat the rules, find the loopholes, and then generally run recklessly loose through our economy. How is that fair, Jeff, that you're requiring a different standard?
Well, I'm not totally sure I understand the question, but I do believe that if people are consumers of healthcare again and they can actually call their doctor and find out what something is going to cost, or, let's suppose somebody's got a little lipoma on their skin that they want to have removed, and they can call 2 or 3 different surgical centers and find out where they can get this relatively non-dangerous thing removed. And one place it's $150 and another place it's $750. They might decide to go to the place where it's $150 because they don't want to fork over the extra, $600 or whatever. So I'm not suggesting people shouldn't have access to health care. I'm saying we should have market forces that will drive the cost down. I mean, you know, the other option is to try to do what they've done in other industrialized countries and have the government set the price. But I'm not in favor of that either. I look at
but
probably
Medicare. Hey, Bill, Medicare actually has a whole book, because I had to go through that one time for one of my clients, that lists every little tiny little procedure and what the estimated cost range should be. And they actually control cost. It's a big thing. Your ACA that you love so much has no cost control whatsoever. The deal is you pay, then you tack on a 25% administration charge for the insurance company, and then next year you rebill again. There is no cost control. It is a piece of garbage. Someday, even though you say, well, it covers everybody, yeah, but at what cost? It's like what he's saying. And so what you need to do, and this is not a subject for the jurists to do, they're going to uphold that piece of trash. But when you go back to Congress and you talk to the mindless 535 people that are there, they've got to get the control of cost. If they don't, it's going to be the same old different day. And all you have to do is look at the gross number, $3.5 trillion, bigger than the whole economy of Great Britain, bigger than the whole economy of France. Come on. And why is it so big? There's no cost.
No, Nick, I was kind of going with you there that, maybe it was overly expensive until you started citing other countries. And I'll tell you, the problem I have with that argument, Nick, is I can't help that all those other countries are lazy and their GDP is less than what we spend on healthcare. We shouldn't be, held just because they can't make a profit on their gross domestic product. But that's fine, Nick. I hear you. But I was kind of there. Now, Adam, would you go cost effective and price out the various treatments and go cheap on your health when you were coming, or would you exploit the plan to the fullest extent of it? Because Jeff seems to believe that you ought to be cost conscious in the exercise of healthcare when it comes to you. Which one would you do,
Well,
Jeff?
I actually agree 100% with Jeff. And I would just say more broadly, I'm really sick and tired of this vilification of the top 1%, the top 1% who pay 50% of the taxes and who employ people and who receiving healthcare through their corporations. Those big bad corporations do a lot of good. And quite frankly, when it comes to healthcare, I'd like to point out, and this relates to COVID, 42% of our population is obese. And of the people who have died of COVID, they have had an average of nearly three comorbidities, unlike Korea, unlike Japan. We don't talk enough about preventative medicine, okay? And that's a problem. And
then fine. Professor, I've got it right here for you. You ready? No, and we're going to do it this way, okay? Because I want to make sure, Professor, it is you and I one-on-one. Do you recall in your very first year torts class, the thin-skulled plaintiff?
I certainly do.
Good. Then I'm saying to you, welcome to America. Obesity, morbidity, diabetes, that is what we get because that is what we have, and that is established in the law. Nick, how did you like that one?
I think that is sick, Bill. I mean, the thing is, this is the whole left argument, sickening, and it makes America sick. I totally agree with Adam. And in terms of you insulting other countries' GDP, you just insulted the great country of Germany, which are very hardworking people, and our healthcare system exceeds the entire GDP of Germany. Can you imagine that, Bill? Okay, and again, I know it's really hard for the people on the left to understand numbers, their number challenge, but 3.5 trillion is a big number. And I also have to agree with Adam. First of all, his fan club would come after him. I didn't. But the other reason why is he's right. We don't take enough self-responsibility. 40% of the American population is obese, and they need to get, like he said, they need to get in and take care of it. Instead of, hey, look, my fingernail hurts today, I'm going to go see my doctor. Baloney, because it's not going to cost me anything, because it's free. Because why is it free? It's because the Democrats give me my health care for free. Baloney. Get rid of the whole thing.
No, the Democrats have an affirmative obligation to.
Or the Republicans, I don't really care. It doesn't matter which side.
One, because we have a heart, and two, we have to make up for the fact that all of your other country club loving friends are out there selling quadruple portions, calling it, the meal of the day at 7-Eleven, at Applebee's, and all those other places. And all
my country club friends are all in good shape.
While they're making okay, and then
hey Bill, my country club friends are all in good shape. We play tennis, we swim, we play golf, and we're not morbidly obese except Donald Trump. My club.
Okay, Jeff, you're laughing. Do you have something to add here?
I actually do. Another interesting experiment you can try at home if you want to understand my point on healthcare. Call up your doctor's office sometime and ask the price for a particular medical service. Ask for the self-pay price, the price they will charge you if you don't have insurance. It ends up being about half of what they charge you if you do have insurance. Now, you might think that's highway robbery, but that is absolutely God's truth. And so the people that are paying it feel the cost, and the doctor's office knows they're not willing to pay the outrageous price that they charge the insurance company. And that is the beginning of negotiating your rates down, is knowing that you're paying the bill.
And you, I agree with Jeff, and you call that the Affordable Healthcare Act. That is a big fraud.
The other something that is not affordable is the fact that the doctors who are part of the 1% that are exercising and playing tennis doubles with you, Nick, are the ones that are jacking up the insurance companies, because they're like, let it ride. For them, it's a big, day at the racetrack. They're just going to take and gamble the money away, and then they're like, oh, you mean I have to be brought back to reality and give you what the self-pay price is? Here, it's $5. Oh, but you have a great insurance plan. Don't worry about it. Just sign here, and then they hand over a bill for $200,000. Fred, you have any thoughts? Because these guys, I think, are just outrageous. They're living in a bubble.
No, we're living in reality. He's living in this weirdo land that he doesn't believe we spend $3.5 trillion on what Jeff has pointed out quite cogently, that we're wasting money on healthcare, but it's okay.
I agree with Dick that to the extent that we're spending insane amounts on healthcare, far more than any other country, and we're not getting better results. We're getting worse results. People are a lot less happy than with healthcare here than they are in, say, Canada. So the legislature should stop with the Band-Aid and go to Medicare for all.
See, and
that's the solution.
Right. Well, that's what I began with. But as long as you guys are against Medicare,
okay, but Medicare for all makes sense because of one thing: it controls cost.
That's right.
And the thing is, it's the only system I've seen out there that controls cost. The cost is controlled in Medicare. All the other systems just don't control cost because they will not allow price gouging.
Fine. Then I would be one of the first ones to say and stand in on that front line. So let's control costs. Let's not gouge or anything else. Yeah. But in the meantime, Nick, it is really unfair and is disingenuous for you on national or international television to accuse me of not being sensitive to the underworking and lazy people of the world who can't even pull their own weight with their GDP. I resent the remark. In fact, it's because I know that they're not pulling their own weight, because that's why their countries are all below our healthcare costs. Because remember, Nick, we are the largest economy in the world. And if we can afford it, why shouldn't we spend it?
You're insulting our friends in Germany and Great Britain, okay? Because we don't spend, we squander our health care down the toilet. And not only should they have Medicare for all, they should also control the cost of drugs. I mean, this is ridiculous. I can go buy my drugs in Canada. I used to do that because it was cheaper than the United States. And they have a rule that you can't buy your drugs in Canada.
Yeah, you know why?
Law, okay. And I bought it anyway. You know why? Because there was no penalty to the law. Right. Seriously. Oh, then we should throw the law out, but they're not going to, because that's what they would do with the ACA. So it's still the law, and that's it.
No, but Adam and Jeff would throw the law out because there is no penalty, because they throw it out under the Commerce Clause, wouldn't you, Adam and Jeff?
Adam, I would have kept the entire law intact by denying certiorari in National Federation. And I will say this: I may not politically agree with the law, but as a legal matter and as a judge, I would have deferred to the decisions of the coordinate branches as elected by the people. And I would say, with regard to healthcare, most diseases are caused by obesity and a sedentary lifestyle. That is a fact.
Right.
And until we address preventative medicine, we're not really addressing the problem, okay? And I do get concerned with Medicare for All. We may control costs, but are we going to maintain quality?
Maybe. That's a definite maybe, but we'll control cost. I'm not sure about the quality. We'll have to.
I suspect the answer to that is a resounding no. So we better get back to preventative medicine and have a 6% obesity rate instead of 42%.
But I agree with you on the obesity and the preventive medicine. And we don't spend any time with that, but that is a big problem in the United States. And the real problem is, Adam, as you well know, we don't want to address the real problem because that would hurt people's feelings that we're obese. Okay. And we don't want to address the real problem. We way overpay for a health system. That would hurt our feelings, right? But those are the realities of it. And that's what we need to do. So we need to get somebody to put the realities in front of them. And you're right, this 40%, you live in Georgia now. I used to live in the rural South. I moved to Raleigh, but still part of the rural South. And you can see it. It's all over the bloody place. And they go, but I get my health care free. Yeah, that's going to help you.
Right.
Okay. Well, there is one thing, because we here at the Lion's Den, the Lawyer's Den, there is always one thing that we can always count on, and that is the hypocrisy of our good law professor, because he no longer has to make an argument or get graded upon, and that is this. That is this. And then, Nick, I'm going to hand it over to you, because this is blatantly a cheap shot by me, because I want to dare his fan club to e-mail me. And that is this. It wasn't but a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I don't know, but it was a time ago when Adam, the phenomenal professor, said that the robe bestowed upon a justice imparts increased wisdom, and advocated at that point. I think he said quite specifically that it is his intention, or his understanding, that Barrett was going to be looking at the consequences of getting rid of the Health Care Act, and that given the freedom of being a lifetime appointee, that she would surprise many of us and be a pragmatist. And yet, in today, when he predicted how the court was going to rule, he did not once include Justice Barrett on the side of preserving the healthcare system. Instead, he said immediately she would throw it out of existence. Adam, what do you have to say about your hypocrisy?
There's no hypocrisy, because you are assuming that not upholding the CARE Act would lead to a bad result, and you're assuming that doing so would lead to a good result. And that's precisely the problem with judges. It allows them to just think based on their subjective moral values of what's good and what's not good, and it leaves them to do whatever they want to do.
Adam, my critique was far more specific. You said to us and the entire world, 122 nations, that Justice Barrett would not invalidate the ACA. And yet tonight you told us that she was one of the votes that would invalidate the ACA if they had their druthers.
Maybe she's doing so because she feels there's no textual basis in the Constitution to uphold it. And quite frankly, yes, I agree with you. Judges should consider the consequences of their decisions, but those decisions have to be based in a reasonable interpretation of the text. And if she disagrees with that, I think that's a reasonable disagreement.
Nick, I think you have a frustrated litigator with Adam, because he can't make up his mind about which way Justice Barrett's going to go. She's either going to be, influenced by wisdom, or she's just going to gut the act. She's either going to take into account all the considerations, or she's just going to rule by the.
I think we're going to find out, what sort of jurist she is at the end of the day. So everybody will be reading her opinion. When's the opinion going to come out? In May? Somewhere? Okay. So the thing is, in May, we'll be able to read her opinion and see what she has to say about this mess. A couple things that won't happen. It will not solve our healthcare crisis. Another thing that ain't going to happen. It will not solve the obesity crisis. Another thing that's not going to happen. It won't solve the $3.5 trillion we spend on this mess every year. But I agree with Adam, because if I don't agree, remember his fan club will come after me.
You don't have to qualify it.
I do that enough. Is that the thing is, what will happen is that they're going to uphold it at the end of the day. That's what's going to happen. And it's really Congress's and the president's problem under your new Democratic leadership to see if they can get the bull by the horns, or are they going to pass another piece of trash like the ACA again?
Well, I have one more addendum. Gentlemen, and that is simply this, that you guys are all missing the larger point, and that is that they are not going to invalidate it, because if they did, when their decision came out in the middle of next year, you know what's going on in the middle of next year? they're going to be administering all of the vaccines for the COVID crisis. And to suddenly throw 77 million people off the insurance rolls in the middle of a crisis would be bedlam. And so the Supreme Court can't even afford to do that if any of them are thinking about the possible consequences. And you thought this was a summer of protests. Wait until next summer when there's a cure out there, but nobody can get it because they've been thrown off their health insurances midstream. Nick.
Yeah, they'll probably keep it. But the thing is that they're going to keep the trash until the American people wake up, take a basic math course, and then start realizing that they need to, take some personal responsibility, which, by the way, caused a lot of this healthcare problem to begin with. And then number two, they need to control the cost. But we need to bring that out to people because right now, I believe, and I haven't read any of the arguments or any of the amicus briefs, I'm willing to bet no one mentioned the huge cost of healthcare in this country relative to the other countries of the world. And I will not insult our friends from Germany, who you believe are worthless in terms of workers. And I will not insult our people from Great Britain, who you believe don't work hard enough. It's only Americans that work hard, because the thing is, they work hard too, but their entire economy we suck down the drain if they had to pay for our health costs. Their entire economy, Bill. So wake up and smell the coffee, my left-leaning friend.
Fine. I believe in a living constitution. I also believe in the fact that Nick has to land this plane.
Okay, and the plane shall land, and it's at the hour. We like to thank everybody from coming to the Lawyer's Den. We will see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow.